The late August sun, hovering high in the vast, cloudless expanse of the sky, beat down relentlessly on the manicured lawns and impeccably maintained facades of the Riverside Springs subdivision. It drew shimmering heat waves from the dark asphalt streets and sent sensible residents flocking towards the welcome, artificially cooled embrace of their air-conditioned homes, or, more appealingly today, towards the cool, turquoise oasis of the sprawling community pool complex. It was the Saturday of the long Labor Day weekend, a date circled on neighborhood calendars for months, the day of the annual Riverside Springs Splash Day fundraiser. This event served as a cherished local tradition, a boisterous, chlorine-scented communal ritual meant to mark the unofficial, bittersweet end of summer with unrestrained poolside revelry, questionable quantities of grilled hot dogs consumed straight from damp towels, and a collective, good-natured effort to raise funds for much-needed pool upgrades, this year specifically targeting a new ADA-compliant chairlift and improved shade structures. The air around the pool deck itself buzzed and thrummed with a vibrant, chaotic energy. The joyful, high-pitched shrieks of dozens of children engaged in elaborate water gun ambushes and daring cannonball jumps echoed off the surrounding security fence. The rhythmic splash and gurgle of bodies hitting water mingled with the thumping bass line of ubiquitous summer pop hits pulsing from several strategically placed and occasionally competing portable speakers. Mingled amongst it all was the low, pleasant hum of adult conversation as neighbors, freed momentarily from weekday commutes and responsibilities, caught up on local gossip over dripping cones of melting ice cream and sweating cups of lukewarm lemonade. It was, by all appearances, the very picture of idyllic suburban harmony, a vibrant, sun-drenched tableau of American community life unfolding under a relentlessly cheerful blue sky. Presiding over this scene, though conspicuously participating in none of the actual spontaneous fun, was Violet Krenshaw. Violet was the current, formidable, and largely self-aggrandizing president of the Riverside Springs Homeowners Association. A woman in her late 50s, whose crisp, bone-colored linen outfits seemed to possess a supernatural ability to repel poolside moisture and whose tightly pinned, immaculately highlighted blonde hair defied both gravity and the concept of relaxed summer style. Violet moved through the periphery of the bustling event like a restless, finely attired shark patrolling the edges of a vibrant coral reef. She carried a laminated clipboard as if it were a scepter, her expensive fountain pen darting across meticulously organized checklists, her sharp, critical eyes constantly scanning for perceived infractions against the thick binder of HOA rules she knew by heart. Improperly disposed of juice boxes littering the pristine concrete. Towels left unattended on chaise lounges for more than the arbitrarily permitted 15 minutes. Music volume potentially exceeding the ambiguous limits vaguely referenced in paragraph 7, subsection D of the HOA's Summer Conduct Guidelines. Her smile, when offered to passing residents, was thin, tight, and seemed invariably accompanied by an unspoken critique or a mental note to follow up on some observed minor violation later. Violet had ascended to the HOA presidency 2 years prior through a potent combination of procedural attrition, simply outlasting any potential opponents in marathon, late-night board meetings filled with mind-numbing debates over sprinkler regulations and acceptable mailbox finishes, and sheer, unyielding force of personal will. She wielded the modest authority granted by the HOA charter with the unwavering zealous conviction and inflated self-importance of a minor potentate governing a newly claimed territory. Most residents, having learned through painful experience the futility of arguing with her rigid interpretations and the unpleasantness of being targeted for her focused disapproval, like poor Mr. Henderson, who faced 3 months of escalating warnings and threatened fines over the supposedly non-compliant historical hue of his vintage garden gnome, had adopted a strategy of cautious appeasement and avoidance, hoping simply to remain below her perpetually scanning radar. Her presence cast a subtle, almost imperceptible chill even on this sun-drenched day. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, precisely on schedule, a gleaming white-marked county patrol cruiser pulled slowly, respectfully through the already crowded parking lot adjacent to the pool complex. At the wheel was Officer Daniel Cruz, a young, genuinely affable member of the county police department's relatively new community relations unit. Officer Cruz, barely 3 years on the force but already known for his easy smile and dedication to proactive engagement, had been personally invited by the event's volunteer organizing committee weeks ago. His mission today was not enforcement, but education, to give a brief, engaging, age-appropriate water safety presentation for the assembled children. He planned to cover essential tips on safe diving practices, the critical importance of always swimming with a buddy, how to recognize the subtle signs of swimmer distress, and, as a finale, distribute highly coveted plastic junior officer badge stickers, a guaranteed crowd pleaser. He wasn't responding to an emergency. This was the kind of positive, preventative community outreach he genuinely believed in and actively enjoyed participating in. Finding the main parking lot predictably packed solid with resident vehicles, Officer Cruz did exactly what his training and standard operating procedure dictated for an on-duty officer attending a prearranged community event in a marked unit. He carefully maneuvered his cruiser into the clearly marked, red-painted fire lane alongside the curb, positioning it immediately adjacent to the pool's main pedestrian entrance gate. This location, incidentally placing his vehicle directly next to a bright yellow fire hydrant, ensured he had rapid, unimpeded egress if he were suddenly dispatched to a genuine emergency elsewhere in the county. It also kept the official vehicle clearly visible, a passive deterrent, perhaps, and, importantly, avoided consuming a valuable parking spot that a resident attending the fundraiser could use. He cut the engine, grabbed the cardboard box containing his informational pamphlets and the all-important shiny stickers, gave his gleaming patrol car a quick visual check, doors locked, windows up, and headed through the gate towards the cheerful cacophony emanating from the bustling pool deck, mentally rehearsing his opening lines about flotation devices and responsible poolside behavior. He hadn't been inside the gated pool area for more than 5 minutes, just long enough to locate and greet the lead volunteer organizer, a harried but friendly woman named Brenda Peterson, exchange pleasantries, and briefly survey the enthusiastic, waterlogged crowd of potential junior badge recipients, when Violet Crenshaw's eagle eye, constantly scanning her domain for perceived imperfections, landed decisively on his parked vehicle. She stopped dead in her tracks near the entrance gate, her entire body stiffening as if she'd received an electric shock. Her face, moments before arranged in lines of placid, judgmental surveillance, clouded over instantly with a sudden, astonishingly disproportionate fury. The patrol car, parked, right there, bold as brass, occupying the sacred asphalt of the fire lane. Yes, that was a minor rule infraction in itself, perhaps, but far more importantly in Violet's personal hierarchy of outrages, it sat squarely in the precise, unmarked spot Violet had mentally, though entirely unofficially and unilaterally, designated as priority reserved parking for the esteemed Splash Day organizing committee chair, a title and privilege that belonged solely, in her estimation, to herself. Never mind that no such designation existed on any official Riverside Springs map, signage, or within the voluminous HOA bylaws. In Violet's fiercely entitled mind, her elevated status as president demanded certain unspoken perquisites, and that particular 20-foot stretch of curb adjacent to the main entrance was undeniably one of them. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of the official vehicle, with its bold county seal and imposing roof-mounted light bar, occupying her spot sent an immediate, volcanic surge of indignant rage coursing through her veins. "Unbelievable," she muttered aloud, her voice tight with suppressed fury, her knuckles whitening as she gripped her clipboard so hard the plastic edges dug into her palm. The absolute, unmitigated gall. She didn't pause for even a nanosecond to consider the potential legitimate reasons why a marked police cruiser might be parked there, responding to an unseen emergency within the facility, providing security, or perhaps, as was the actual case, attending a prearranged community function. Her mind, conditioned to see slights and challenges to her authority everywhere, leaped immediately and irrevocably to the most personally offensive conclusion. This was a deliberate transgression, a blatant disregard for her position, a violation of her assumed territorial rights. This was an affront of the highest order, and it demanded immediate, decisive, and demonstrative action. Order must be restored. Her authority must be unequivocally reasserted. Ignoring the cheerful, oblivious chatter and laughter swirling around her, Violet abruptly pivoted, pulled her large, expensive smartphone from the pocket of her linen jacket, and began jabbing angrily at the screen with a sharp, manicured fingernail. She bypassed 911. This wasn't an emergency, it was an insult. She bypassed the routine non-emergency police line. Involving them directly might lead to inconvenient questions or delays. Instead, she scrolled rapidly through her contacts and dialed a direct number stored under the somewhat clandestine name Gary Quicklift. Gary Bukowski, the owner of Quicklift Towing, owed her a significant favor, or at least, Violet firmly believed he did. She had, after all, personally championed the renewal of Quicklift's exclusive and rather lucrative contract for handling all parking enforcement towing within the expansive Riverside Springs subdivision the previous year, smoothly overriding the bids from two other local companies that had come in slightly lower. Gary understood the value of her patronage. "Gary? Violet Krenshaw here." She snapped into the phone the instant he answered, dispensing entirely with customary greetings or pleasantries. Her tone was clipped, urgent, demanding. "I have an urgent situation requiring immediate attention. I need one of your trucks dispatched to the main community pool entrance on Willow Lane. Right now? No delays." There was a brief, perceptible pause on the other end of the line. Hi, Violet. Everything okay down there?" Gary's voice sounded slightly hesitant, tinged with the caution born of previous, often demanding interactions with the HOA president. "What's the specific situation? What needs towing?" "The situation," Violet declared, her voice dripping with righteous disdain as she glared daggers at Officer Cruz's silently parked cruiser, "is an unauthorized, abandoned vehicle illegally parked in a designated fire lane, completely blocking primary access right at the main gate during a major community event. It presents a safety hazard and needs to be removed from HOA property now. No questions asked." She chose her words carefully, deliberately omitting any mention of the vehicle's official markings or ownership. "Abandoned? Really? At the pool during splash day? Weird," Gary mused, clearly picturing some hapless resident's neglected minivan or a teenager's broken-down jalopy. "Okay, what kind of car is it, Violet? Make, model, color?" "It doesn't matter what kind of car it is." Violet insisted impatiently, annoyance sharpening her tone. Let Gary deal with the specifics when his driver arrived. "It's improperly parked in a restricted zone, it's unauthorized, it's obstructing access, and it needs to be impounded immediately according to Riverside Springs HOA regulations, Article 12, Section 4B. I am authorizing the tow personally in my official capacity as HOA president. Now, get your driver over here, Gary. Make it priority 1. The clock is ticking." "Okay, Violet. Okay, calm down." Gary sighed, the weariness evident even over the phone. He clearly decided that arguing or probing further was not worth the inevitable headache. Appeasing the powerful HOA president was the path of least resistance, especially concerning their ongoing contract. "All right, look, I've got a flatbed, truck number 3, just finishing up a repossession call over on Elm Street. He's maybe 10, 15 minutes out, traffic depending. I'll route him straight over to you at the pool. See that he arrives promptly," Violet commanded curtly, before ending the call with a decisive, final tap on the screen. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, smoothed her already immaculate linen jacket, and allowed a small, grim smile of satisfaction to touch her lips. Order would be swiftly restored. Her decisive leadership would be clearly demonstrated. Trespassers, regardless of their official insignia, would learn not to trifle with Violet Krenshaw or the sacred rules of Riverside Springs. True to Gary Bukowski's word, less than 15 minutes later, just long enough for Violet to mentally rehearse the stern lecture she intended to deliver to the offending vehicle's owner, should they dare to appear. The unmistakable, intrusive growl of a heavy diesel engine, accompanied by the piercing, rhythmic beep-beep-beep of a commercial backup alarm, sliced through the generally festive poolside atmosphere. Heads turned. A large, brightly branded Quicklift towing flatbed truck, gleaming under the afternoon sun, lumbered slowly but purposefully into view, maneuvering with surprising agility past rows of parked minivans and SUVs towards the congested pool entrance area. The driver, A burly man with heavily tattooed forearms visible beneath the rolled-up sleeves of his grease-stained company uniform, hopped out of the cab, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, his expression one of mild confusion as he took in the bustling family event. Violet, who had been waiting impatiently near the gate, clipboard held ready like a battle standard, marched over immediately, intercepting him before he could fully assess the situation. "Right here," she commanded, pointing an imperious, perfectly manicured finger directly towards Officer Cruz's gleaming patrol cruiser. "This vehicle. It's illegally parked in a designated fire lane and obstructing event access. It needs to be towed off HOA property immediately." The driver, whose name tag read Marv, squinted first at the official police markings on the car, the county seal on the door, the light bar on the roof, the exempt license plate, then back at Violet's stern, demanding face. A visible flicker of doubt and deep uncertainty crossed his features. Beg pardon, ma'am," he stammered, clearly taken aback. "But that's a county police car. A marked unit. Are you absolutely sure about this? Towing a cop car. That's usually a big no-no unless dispatch calls it in." Violet drew herself up to her full height, radiating waves of indignant offense. "Are you questioning my direct authority?" she retorted sharply, her voice rising in pitch, attracting more attention from nearby onlookers. "I am Violet Krenshaw, the duly elected president of this homeowners association. This vehicle is parked illegally in a restricted zone on private HOA property without any authorization. Your company, Quick Lift Towing, is contracted by this HOA specifically to remove unauthorized vehicles upon request. Now, are you going to perform the service you are paid handsomely to provide, or do I need to have a conversation with Gary about the terms of his contract renewal?" The implied threat hung heavy in the air. Marv, the driver, still looked profoundly hesitant, his eyes darting nervously between the official police insignias on the cruiser and Violet's imperious, unyielding expression. He was clearly caught in a deeply uncomfortable bind. "I dunno, ma'am," he mumbled, shifting his weight uneasily. It feels kinda off, you know? Maybe we should just wait? Or call dispatch to verify?" "Verify? Clearance," Violet scoffed, waving a dismissive, impatient hand as if swatting away a bothersome fly. "My authorization as HOA president is the only clearance required on HOA property. Gary sent you here specifically at my direct request. Now, stop wasting time with pointless questions. Hook it up immediately and get it out of here before it impedes this important community fundraiser any further." That's a direct order. Her aggressive certainty, combined with the explicit invocation of her presidential authority and the veiled threat regarding his boss's contract, seemed to finally override Marv's ingrained caution and common sense. With a deeply resigned shrug and a muttered oath under his breath, he reluctantly turned back to his truck. He backed the flatbed slowly into position, the heavy steel ramp lowering onto the pavement with a loud, protesting metallic groan. He unspooled the thick, greasy winch cable from its drum, the heavy steel hook clanking loudly against the concrete sidewalk. By now, the whole bizarre commotion, the arrival of the tow truck, the argument, the unmistakable preparations to tow a police car, had drawn the focused attention of dozens of curious parents, startled volunteers, and even some older children near the pool gate. Smartphones, ubiquitous chroniclers of modern absurdity, began to emerge from pockets and poolside bags, their small lenses glinting in the sun as people instinctively started recording the unfolding, unbelievable spectacle. Whispers rippled urgently through the growing crowd of onlookers. "Is that really Officer Cruz's car? What on earth is Violet doing now? She can't actually tow a police car, can she? This is insane." Inside the relative cool of the pool area's covered pavilion, Officer Daniel Cruz was just finishing up his engaging water safety talk, demonstrating the proper way to throw a rescue ring, surrounded by a throng of eager, dripping children clamoring for their promised junior officer badge stickers. He was smiling, enjoying the positive interaction, when Brenda Peterson, the lead volunteer organizer, suddenly rushed over, her face pale and etched with genuine alarm. Officer Cruz, you need to come outside. Right now? It's unbelievable. There's a tow truck out front, and they're actually hooking up to your patrol car. Officer Cruz's friendly, approachable demeanor evaporated in an instant, replaced by sharp, professional alertness. His training kicked in immediately. What? A tow truck? Hooking up to my unit. Muttering a quick apology to the bewildered children and Brenda, he strode purposefully, quickly weaving through the crowds towards the main entrance gate. He emerged onto the sun-baked sidewalk just as Marv, the tow truck driver, looking deeply unhappy, was about to carefully attach the heavy steel winch hook to the reinforced tow point on the underside of his cruiser's front frame. Hold it right there. Stop. Officer Cruz commanded loudly, his voice calm but resonant with undeniable, trained authority that cut through the surrounding chatter. He stepped forward decisively, automatically reaching for the badge clipped to his belt, displaying it prominently for the driver to see clearly. I'm Officer Daniel Cruz, County Police Department. This is my assigned, active-duty patrol vehicle. What exactly do you think you're doing here? Marv immediately dropped the heavy hook with a clang and raised his hands defensively, palms outward, relief flooding his face at the official intervention. Whoa, hey there, officer. Thank goodness. Look, this lady here. He gestured emphatically towards Violet, who stood nearby with her arms crossed, radiating pure defiance. She's the one called it in. Said the car was abandoned, parked illegally, blocking access. She authorized the tow herself, said she was the HOA president. Officer Cruz turned his steady gaze to Violet, his expression carefully neutral, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. Ma'am, I'm Officer Cruz. I'm here today for a scheduled community engagement event, invited by your own organizers. This vehicle is legally parked according to standard departmental operational procedure for community events to ensure quick response if needed. There is absolutely no legal or procedural basis for it to be towed. Violet let out a short, sharp, incredulous laugh, a sound utterly devoid of humor. Legally parked? Don't be ridiculous. You're occupying a designated fire lane, and more importantly, you are blocking designated committee access. Furthermore, as far as I am concerned, your official jurisdiction ends at the public street curb. This pool facility and the surrounding parking areas are private HOA property, governed by our rules and regulations, and I, as president, am in charge of enforcing them here. This vehicle is being removed forthwith for violating our community rules. Ma'am. Officer Cruz began again, making a conscious effort to keep his tone patient and explanatory, despite the woman's blatant hostility and ignorance of the law. With all due respect, established state vehicle codes and emergency vehicle protocols explicitly supersede any local HOA rules or regulations regarding access and parking for on-duty law enforcement officers engaged in official business or community functions. That's well-established law. Furthermore, his voice hardened slightly. Attempting to tow, move, or otherwise interfere with an active-duty police vehicle without proper authorization or legitimate cause constitutes a serious criminal offense, namely interference with official duties. Interference? Violet interrupted contemptuously, her voice rising shrilly, drawing even more attention. You are the one interfering. Interfering with this community event. Interfering with the proper enforcement of HOA regulations. This improperly parked vehicle constitutes a public nuisance and an eyesore. She turned her fury back towards the now extremely uncomfortable tow truck driver, Marv. I gave you a direct order. Hook it up. Now. Or I'll ensure Quick Lift Towing never gets another dime from this association. Marv looked pleadingly from Violet's enraged face to Officer Cruz's stern, uniformed presence, clearly paralyzed by indecision and conflicting pressures. He hesitated, obviously unwilling to physically defy a direct police officer, yet also palpably intimidated by the furious, influential HOA president who held considerable sway over his company's vital contract. He seemed frozen, unable to act. Seeing the driver's paralyzing hesitation, Violet let out a strangled shriek of pure exasperation and fury. Useless. Completely useless. Fine. If you won't follow simple instructions, I'll do it myself. In a move that stunned everyone present into momentary silence, she lunged forward, roughly shoved the bewildered Marv aside, grabbed the heavy-duty, grease-covered remote control unit for the powerful winch that hung from a hook on the side of the truck's control panel, and aggressively, repeatedly stabbed at the large green, winch in button with her thumb. With a sudden, loud, protesting, grinding noise from the powerful electric motor, the winch sprang violently to life. The thick steel cable instantly tightened with thousands of pounds of force. The heavy hook, which Marv hadn't properly secured to a designated tow point in his hesitation, bit hard into the cruiser's plastic rear bumper cover and metal undercarriage near the axle, a completely improper and damaging attachment. Immediately, the patrol car's rear wheels began to scrape loudly, unwillingly across the rough pavement, the tires screeching in protest as the vehicle was dragged inexorably, awkwardly up the lowered steel flatbed ramp. Sparks flew as metal scraped against concrete. The distinct, sickening sound of cracking plastic from the bumper echoed in the suddenly silent air. The crowd gasped collectively, horrified. Half a dozen or more smartphones were now held high, steadily capturing every unbelievable second of the escalating insanity. The duly elected president of the Riverside Springs Homeowners Association attempting to personally, physically, illegally tow a marked county police car, while the uniformed officer stood mere feet away. Officer Daniel Cruz, maintaining a remarkable degree of professional composure despite the sheer absurdity and illegality unfolding before him, instantly recognized the situation had escalated beyond verbal warnings. He immediately reached for the police radio clipped securely to his shoulder strap. "Dispatch, County Dispatch, Unit 714, urgent assistance required." He spoke calmly but firmly into the microphone, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "Requesting immediate backup units, respond code 2 to the Riverside Springs Community Pool, main entrance off Willow Lane. I have an adult female individual actively interfering with official police equipment, attempting an unauthorized tow of my assigned patrol vehicle, causing damage. Suspect is identified as Violet Krenshaw, HOA president. Situation is actively non-compliant and escalating. Require additional units on scene." While Violet, her face set in a mask of grim, misguided triumph, continued to hold down the winch button, seemingly oblivious to the cascade of serious legal consequences she was unleashing upon herself with every passing second, Marv, the tow truck driver, finally jolted out of his stupor. Reacting purely on panicked instinct, he lunged towards the main control panel on the side of his truck bed and slammed his fist down hard on the large, red emergency stop button. The powerful winch motor immediately cut out with a jolt, halting the dragging operation just as the cruiser's rear tires were fully seated onto the ramp, leaving the vehicle listing at a precarious, unnatural angle, its front wheels still firmly planted on the ground. The immediate danger of further movement was averted, but significant damage was already undeniably done. Long, deep gouge marks scarred the pavement leading up the ramp, and the cruiser's rear bumper cover was visibly cracked and hanging partially detached, clear evidence of the improper hook placement and forceful dragging. Within what felt like mere seconds, but was likely closer to 3 minutes, the distinct, rapidly approaching sound of multiple sirens, closer, more insistent, and more purposeful this time, announced the imminent arrival of Officer Cruz's requested backup. 2 additional marked county patrol cars swung swiftly, efficiently into the pool entrance area, their emergency lights painting flashing, rotating patterns of red and blue across the assembled crowd and the chaotic scene. They positioned themselves strategically, effectively boxing in the quick-lift towing flatbed truck and preventing any potential departure. 4 uniformed officers emerged briskly from the vehicles, their expressions uniformly serious, their hands instinctively hovering near their equipment belts as they quickly, professionally took in the bizarre tableau before them. The county patrol car listing awkwardly, half on, half off the tow truck ramp, the large tow truck blocking the fire lane. The sizable crowd of stunned civilian onlookers holding up smartphones like offerings, a visibly relieved but professionally composed officer. Cruz standing near his damaged vehicle, a frantic, profusely sweating tow truck driver gesturing wildly. And at the center of it all, a defiant, flushed Violet Krenshaw still clutching the greasy winch remote control unit in her hand like some sort of bizarre, ill-gotten trophy. Sergeant Eva Rostova, a highly respected veteran officer with 15 years on the force and a well-earned reputation for calm competence and absolutely no tolerance for nonsense, stepped forward and took tactical command of the scene immediately. Her sharp eyes swept over the situation in a single, comprehensive glance. "Officer Cruz, give me a concise report," she commanded crisply, her voice cutting through the remaining murmurs of the crowd. Officer Cruz quickly, calmly, and objectively recounted the sequence of events, starting from his scheduled arrival for the community presentation, his proper parking procedure, Violet Crenshaw's immediate, aggressive confrontation, her baseless claims and demands, her explicit order to the tow truck driver, her dismissal of his own lawful authority and warnings, and culminating in her physically seizing the winch controls and actively, deliberately towing his vehicle against his direct orders, resulting in the visible damage. As he spoke, several bystanders immediately approached the other newly arrived officers, eagerly offering their video footage from multiple angles as corroborating evidence. Marv, the tow truck driver, looking immensely relieved to have official backup, gave his own hurried, detailed statement, emphasizing repeatedly that he had acted solely on Violet Crenshaw's explicit, insistent, and threatening orders, and that he had desperately tried to stop her once she grabbed the remote. Sergeant Rostova listened intently to all accounts, her expression growing progressively sterner, her lips tightening into a thin, disapproving line with each new detail confirming the sheer audacity of Violet's actions. She personally walked over to the damaged patrol car, carefully inspecting the cracked rear bumper, the deep scrapes on the undercarriage, and the improperly attached winch hook still dangling accusingly near the rear axle. She then took a moment to review a few seconds of crucial video footage captured clearly on a nearby teenager's smartphone, footage that undeniably showed Violet Krenshaw, her face contorted in anger, physically operating the winch remote control as the police car was being dragged onto the ramp. Finally, Sergeant Rostova turned her full, unwavering attention to Violet, who stood stiffly beside the tow truck, still radiating an astonishing aura of indignation and injured pride, seemingly convinced that she remained entirely in the right, the victim of unwarranted interference. "Ma'am, I am Sergeant Rostova with the County Police Department," she began, her voice dangerously quiet, but carrying an unmistakable weight of authority that silenced all remaining whispers. "We have now obtained multiple corroborating witness statements and clear video evidence indicating that you actively interfered with Officer Cruz while he was engaged in his official duties, that you willfully ignored his lawful commands to cease your actions, and that you deliberately operated heavy towing machinery without any license or authorization, resulting in significant, measurable damage to official county property, specifically Patrol Unit 714 assigned to Officer Cruz." Violet visibly bristled at the accusation, drawing herself up even straighter. "I am Violet Krenshaw, the duly elected president of the Riverside Springs Homeowners Association," she announced haughtily, her voice loud and ringing with self-importance, as if reciting her official title somehow conferred diplomatic immunity or negated the laws she had just broken. "That officer deliberately parked his vehicle illegally, blatantly violating our clearly posted community rules and obstructing access during a major event. I was merely fulfilling my sworn duty to enforce our association's regulations, which I am fully empowered and obligated to do. He was the one obstructing official HOA business." "Ma'am," Sergeant Rostova interrupted firmly, her patience clearly exhausted, her voice losing its earlier quiet edge and gaining a sharp, decisive hardness. "Allow me to be perfectly clear. Your internal HOA rules and regulations, regardless of how meticulously documented or fiercely enforced they may be, absolutely do not supersede established state vehicle codes regarding the parking and operation of marked emergency vehicles. They do not supersede state laws regarding interference with a peace officer in the lawful performance of their official duties. Your perceived authority as HOA president grants you zero legal immunity or justification for your actions here today. Furthermore, your unauthorized, unlicensed operation of that commercial towing equipment, which directly resulted in measurable physical damage to public property, unequivocally constitutes the criminal offense of criminal mischief." She paused for effect, letting the weight of the accusation settle, then nodded curtly to one of the other officers standing nearby. "Place her under arrest." Violet's jaw dropped completely, her face registering pure, uncomprehending shock, followed immediately by sputtering outrage. "Arrest? Arrest me. You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. This is utterly outrageous. It's police harassment. I demand to speak to your supervisor immediately. I'll have your badge for this. I'll sue the county. Ma'am, you are under arrest. Please place your hands behind your back, Sergeant Rostova stated calmly, professionally ignoring Violet's escalating, incoherent outburst as the designated arresting officer stepped forward purposefully, handcuffs at the ready. You have the right to remain silent. The timing of the unfolding drama, however, took an unexpectedly theatrical, almost sitcom-like turn. Just as the arresting officer reached for Violet's arm to secure the handcuffs, Brenda Peterson, the flustered lead event volunteer, hurried over again from the pool gate, looking even more stressed than before. Violet. Oh my gosh, Violet. The HOA meeting. The monthly meeting. It's scheduled to start in literally 5 minutes up at the clubhouse. You're supposed to give the opening presidential remarks and present the budget report. A sudden flicker of cunning calculation, a potential escape strategy, seemed to cross Violet's panicked face. Perhaps she thought she could rally support among the board members, or somehow use the formal setting of the meeting to escape the current ignominious predicament unfolding by the pool. That's absolutely right, she declared loudly, momentarily pulling her arm away from the officer's grasp. I have urgent, official HOA business to attend to right now. Important matters concerning this entire community. You cannot possibly detain me at this critical juncture. Sergeant Rostova exchanged a brief, almost imperceptible but deeply understanding glance with Officer Cruz. Arresting Violet here, amidst the remaining families and impressionable children at the Splash Day event, would undoubtedly create an even bigger, more disruptive spectacle, potentially traumatizing some of the younger witnesses. Allowing her to proceed to the formal, scheduled HOA meeting, however, offered a different, perhaps more contained, and certainly more symbolically resonant venue for concluding the necessary police business. All right, Ms. Krenshaw, Sergeant Rostova conceded smoothly, her expression unreadable. We understand your civic obligations. We will escort you to your meeting at the clubhouse. We can conclude our official business there, away from the festivities. A fleeting look of smug, misguided triumph flashed across Violet's face. She clearly misinterpreted the temporary tactical reprieve as a sign of deference to her position, a validation of her importance. Flanked closely by 2 uniformed officers, with Sergeant Rostova and Officer Cruz following immediately behind, Violet Krenshaw, still radiating righteous indignation, but now imbued with a renewed sense of unwarranted confidence, was formally escorted the short 100-yard distance from the chaotic, sun-baked pool entrance across the parking lot to the relatively sedate, air-conditioned atmosphere of the Riverside Springs Clubhouse community room. Inside, approximately 30 HOA members, residents who took their civic participation seriously, were already seated in neat rows of folding chairs, patiently waiting for the scheduled monthly meeting to begin, murmuring quietly amongst themselves. Ignoring the startled looks and rising whispers from the assembled members as she entered with a police escort, Violet, seemingly determined to project an aura of normalcy and control, marched directly, purposefully to the wooden podium positioned at the front of the room. She adjusted the microphone height with an air of practiced authority, tapped it sharply twice, the sharp, percussive sound echoing loudly in the suddenly silent, expectant room as all eyes turned towards her and the 4 uniformed officers standing grimly, watchfully near the main doorway. Good afternoon, everyone, Violet began, her voice regaining much of its usual commanding, slightly condescending tone, though perhaps laced with a subtle, underlying tremor she couldn't entirely conceal. Welcome to the August monthly meeting of the Riverside Springs Homeowners Association. I sincerely apologize for the slight delay in commencing our proceedings. I was unavoidably detained for a few moments while dealing personally, and quite decisively, I might add, with a rather serious matter involving unauthorized vehicle parking and blatant obstruction down at the pool entrance area during our wonderful Splash Day event, a situation which, I assure you, I have now fully resolved. She never got to finish her self-congratulatory, entirely fabricated sentence. Sergeant Eva Rostova stepped forward purposefully from the doorway, moving towards the podium, flanked by the other officers. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear, steady, and carried easily to every corner of the room, cutting through Violet's remarks like a scalpel. "Violet Krenshaw," Sergeant Rostova stated formally, leaving no room for doubt or interruption. "As I informed you just moments ago outside, you are under arrest by the authority of the County Police Department for the following offenses: interference with official duties of a peace officer, a violation of State Statute 18.2 to 460, criminal mischief involving intentional damage to county property, Statute 18.2 to 137, and unlawful use or operation of towing and recovery equipment without license or proper authority, Statute 46.2 to 118. As the assembled HOA members gasped collectively, murmurs of stunned disbelief rippling through the room like a shockwave, the designated arresting officer moved efficiently, professionally behind the podium. He took Violet's left arm firmly, swung it behind her back, followed swiftly by her right, and securely clicked the cold, unforgiving steel handcuffs shut around her wrists. The sharp, distinct, metallic sound echoed loudly, unnaturally, in the suddenly cavernous silence of the community room. Violet Krenshaw, utterly flabbergasted, her face a mask of disbelief turning rapidly to apoplectic rage, could only sputter incoherently, words failing her entirely for perhaps the first time in her adult life, as she was formally read her Miranda rights once again. "You have the right to remain silent." This time not discreetly by the pool, but publicly, humiliatingly, in front of the very community members she claimed to lead and govern. Her desperate, audacious power play, conceived in a moment of petty fury over a parking spot, had backfired in the most spectacular, public, and legally consequential way imaginable. The immediate aftermath within the clubhouse was a whirlwind of chaos, confusion, and ultimately, decisive action. As Violet Krenshaw, now protesting loudly, shrilly, but utterly futilely about lawsuits, political connections, and police brutality, was firmly escorted out of the community room by two officers towards a waiting patrol car parked conspicuously right outside the main entrance. The stunned HOA board members seated in the front row quickly recovered from their shock and conferred in urgent, hushed tones. The vice president, a mild-mannered, generally unassuming retired accountant named Arthur Jenkins, found himself unexpectedly thrust into the leadership role. Looking slightly shell-shocked but resolute, Arthur reluctantly took the podium, gaveling hesitantly for order amidst the rising tide of excited chatter and speculation from the floor. After restoring a semblance of parliamentary procedure, Arthur, guided by procedural advice whispered urgently by the board's secretary, immediately called for an emergency vote on matters arising directly from the unprecedented events they had just witnessed. Within minutes, fueled by a potent combination of collective embarrassment, anger at Violet's reckless behavior, and a desire to demonstrate responsible governance, the remaining board members voted swiftly and unanimously on several key motions. First, they voted to immediately suspend Violet Crenshaw's presidency and revoke all associated authorities, privileges, and access to HOA accounts, pending the final outcome of her impending criminal case. Second, they voted to approve the immediate allocation of emergency HOA funds, drawn from the reserve account, to cover the full, documented cost of repairs to Officer Daniel Cruz's damaged patrol car, further directing the secretary to draft a formal letter of profound apology to be sent directly to the county chief of police and the affected officer. Finally, spurred by the glaring absurdity of the day's originating incident, they passed a motion, effective immediately, to officially designate the entire curb area adjacent to the main pool entrance gate, specifically including the spot next to the fire hydrant, as a dedicated, unambiguous, emergency vehicle parking only zone, further specifying that the curb be painted bright, unmissable safety blue by the HOA maintenance contractor at the absolute earliest opportunity, complete with stenciled lettering. Violet Crenshaw's dramatic arrest mid-speech quickly became the stuff of Riverside Springs legend, recounted with varying degrees of accuracy and embellishment at neighborhood barbecues and cul-de-sac gatherings for years to come. Facing multiple credible criminal charges, supported by irrefutable video evidence and numerous eyewitness testimonies, she eventually, on the advice of her expensive lawyer, pleaded no contest to significantly reduced misdemeanor charges of disorderly conduct and minor property damage. The resolution involved hefty fines that consumed a considerable portion of her savings, a lengthy period of supervised probation, mandatory attendance at another, presumably more intensive, anger management program, and a court order mandating full financial restitution to the county for the patrol car repairs. Perhaps most painfully for Violet, the plea agreement included a legally binding condition explicitly barring her from holding any elected or appointed position on any homeowners association board within the state for a period of 5 years. Her brief, tumultuous, and ultimately self-destructive reign as the autocrat of Riverside Springs HOA ended not with a quiet resignation or a graceful departure, but with the sharp, definitive, public click of handcuffs in the Clubhouse community room. The following spring, as the dogwood trees lining Willow Lane burst into bloom, the newly painted, vibrant blue curb gleamed brightly, conspicuously, alongside the pool entrance, a silent but potent symbol of the previous summer's drama. Officer Daniel Cruz returned to Riverside Springs, by popular demand from grateful parents and relieved volunteers, to give another engaging water safety presentation for the opening day of the pool season. He parked his fully repaired, gleaming patrol cruiser confidently, legally, in the clearly designated, blue-painted spot without incident or interference. The Splash Day fundraiser that year felt noticeably lighter, more relaxed, more genuinely joyful, the entire community seeming to breathe a collective sigh of relief. Neighbors chatted easily, volunteers managed their stations without fear of arbitrary reprimand, and the background music seemed just a little bit brighter. The shared memory of the day their HOA Karen attempted to tow a cop car, and spectacularly failed, served as a strange but effective catalyst for renewed community solidarity, a humorous cautionary tale, and a tangible reminder that true community strength lay not in rigid adherence to petty rules enforced by autocratic personalities, but in reason, cooperation, and mutual respect. The blue curb stood as silent, constant testament. Sometimes, maintaining peace and harmony required drawing clear, unambiguous lines, both literally on the pavement and figuratively within the social fabric of the neighborhood.